Hello and welcome to this inaugural video on Proc Viya. This time covering all the new coding features added inside of SAS Viya 2024.05. Let's get started. Alright, this is a showcase of all the new added and enhanced tools that have been added to SAS Viya in the coding department. You can see we have a number of new procs. In total we have 6, and we also have a number of enhancements to existing procs that I of course also want to highlight. For this, we will walk through the SAS notebook together, but you can find a link to it in the description down below to run it at your own pleasure. So let's dive in. The first one that has been added is Proc ID generation. This is a tool that helps you to generate unique IDs for your cast tables, and you can of course specify how your ID is named. Here you can see an example where we use the SAS help cars table and then add a unique ID to that table. I have printed the first kind of 5 different rows to it, and you can see those IDs variables, they aren't continuous because of course CAS is distributed, so you will also have kind of a range, but it's guaranteed that these IDs are unique. If you want to make sure that your pre-existing ID is unique, Proc ID validation is there for you. It enables you to check if an import table contains duplicate IDs, and if it does so, it will both print a warning to the log and also give you all those duplicate IDs into a table. Here you can see an example. I put the generated warning as the title of this object and then put all the different observations down below that have duplicate or multiple occurrences within your dataset. Next up, if you have a lot of text and it's from different languages, of course, using text analytics, it's helpful to separate out the different languages. And for that, Proc Language ID can help you to identify the actual language that is contained within your text. And here I have created an example using the 33 currently supported languages of SAS Visual Text Analytics with the same sentence throughout all those different languages. And you can see in that example table, you always have the full language name and its ISO language code afterwards. And now we are using Proc Language ID to have SAS identify the language of that text for us, and then we can kind of check, did it work correctly? And here is the result. You can see through all 33 languages, SAS identified the correct language, and you can see the added column which contains that language identification is called _language_. And rounding things out, for the text analytics side is Proc term co-occur, which calculates a co-occurrence association score for selected pairs of terms. And for that, we also need to make use of Proc text mine, as the output terms and positions of that proc are used as input for the term occur. And you can see there's a lot of things you can tune both on the algorithmic side and also on the term selection side. So dig into this one. There's a lot of potential here. The SAS documentation even has an example of how you can use this to generate embeddings on top of the co-occurrences. And here you can see some of the results with additional explanations around what you are seeing here. I messed up. There is one more text analytics procedure that has been added, Proc text summary, which allows you to summarize a document by reducing the number of sentences, by finding the most important number of sentences to then use as a summarization of your text input documents. Here you can again see the different modifications on that proc. So you can, for example, specify if you want to use things like predefined concepts and noun groups to help evaluate for the summarization. You can, of course, specify the language. The default is English, and a lot of additional stuff. And then down below, you can see a summary from the input documents that have been chosen from this. So let's now finish it off with the last new proc that has been added as part of SAS Visual Forecasting, Proc TS Cust Int, so time series custom interval, which allows you to define and load discrete time interval definitions that more or less fit your specific needs. As an example here, I created a custom quarter that doesn't usually follow the usual quarters of January through March, April through June, but rather it starts in February, so it's shifted by one, and the fourth quarter is November, December, January, which is financial quarters for a lot of tech companies as an example. And then we first generate our definition of the interval. We then specify in our cast session option that we want to make use of a new one. And then we use the TS cast int proc to define our new individualized interval definition. And you can see here how you define it. You can give it an interval name, and you specify the input roles. If you use and stick to the default names, you can omit the input rules completely. And here we can see an application of this on a date like the 1st of January 2024. That would be in the current quarter. The next quarter would start at the 1st of February. The delta till the next one is 1, and its seasonality, so the current iteration of the quarter, is 4. So that's quite useful. For the enhanced procs, we have a new utility inside of proc contents. Now I have to make a note here. This is for Parquet files, and you can see information around the Parquet files if they contain a compressed column or not. And for that, I have added some proc Python code in here that generates an example Parquet file for you. This does require you to have access to a Python subprocess, and that also requires you to have pandas, numpy, and pyarrow installed. If you do not have this, I have provided a sample Parquet file for you to download as well to make use of this. And then we specify our lib name on top of the folder containing our Parquet files, and we take a look at the proc contents output. And here you can see that compressed feature, and we have the specification that our Parquet file actually does contain compressed columns. Well, that's a great enhancement. Next up is an enhancement to proc ds2, where the PRX PREN function is now available, and this function allows you to get, if you have a regular expression like this one that has kind of 3 different possible matches that it provides, then you can use the PRX PREN function to identify the correct or the matched pattern in your pattern expression. So here, for example, we have 3 patterns: book, magazine, and newspaper, and we put them into separate tables to showcase what you can do to kind of filter through these longer quotes and then match them into separate tables based on their identified pattern. And this here, for example, just prints out only the book quote table to the results. The next one is one that is quite extensive, and I have linked here to an example from the SAS documentation, and I only provide you with like the general definitions and give you a general understanding, because both Proc Op Model and Proc MILP are quite complex procs that need a lot of explanation, so I skipped that and just give you the general understanding, because we have gotten a new algorithms or a new solver for solving linear problems, in this case the Bender decomposition algorithm, and it's surfaced both in Proc Op Model and Proc Opt MLIP. The next one is an awesome one for proc import. We have a new statement, the var name row, which allows you to tell SAS if your data is shifted within that delimited file where the headers are. So for example, you have some explanation text before, and then at some row you get the actual headers and then the data somewhere after that. To simulate this, I have created a sample file that has 3 rows of text that we don't want to ingest into SAS. Then we have our header column. Then we again have an empty row that we don't want in SAS. And then we get 5 rows of actual data. And to import this, we have to say get names yes, because otherwise the var name row doesn't make any sense. Why would you specify it if you don't want the header names? And then we specify that in the 4th row we have our actual header definition, and then the 6th row is our data row, so from where the data starts. And using this, you can see the output is just the 5 data rows with the correct name, with the correct ID and name in the column headers. Next up is again a quite extensive enhancement to the automatic time series modeling package. Again, because that package is so vast and there's so much things to do and explain around it, I shorten it down here to just provide you in-depth links to every new enhancement that has been added throughout this package. And rounding things out is Proc PH Select, where we have gotten a new procedure level statement or option, and that is multipass, which can help you change how the data is levelized and reread during the selection process. And you can see this is just added. The default is of course false, so this isn't enabled by default. And running it, you see a difference in runtime. This of course also depends on how big your data is. So with these small data sets that I'm using here, the variation comes down more to randomness and other things going on in the system than to actual enhancements to the proc. But the result is the same between those two statements. So that's a good thing. It doesn't change how anything is calculated or how the result is derived, but rather how you get there. These are all the new and enhanced procs that have been added to SAS Viya 2024.05. I hope you had a hard procking time. See you next time.